Short-term, high-volatility investments, hosted by your main man, Shees. You know me as Geoff Sheasby, a.k.a. the old man of bets, alongside my main man, Ant Latino. You know him as the odds fellow. I know him as a guy who's on, an 8-1 hot streak on free picks on Twitter. We're talking NBA. We're talking NFL. It's a weird week for us, but hey, sometimes you need to adjust to life without football. Ant, talk to the good people. How we doing?
The streak is up. We went 1-1 again last night, so 9-2, but 9-2 still very good in the last 11. We're having a little fun with the NBA. It's rounding into form, and that gives me, some comfort, right? That if I'm not going to have football multiple days during the week and only one game left and no games this weekend, that at least I have something to turn to, and that's my sweet basketball, the sweet hardwood. I got the little guy in the family. He just started playing hoops, and now we got hoops on Saturday mornings.
We love that.
Man, it's about to turn. I played some old man hoops last night. Comeback victory. I think I rolled an ankle because I only put a brace on one, and that was the left ankle and the right ankle. Like I think now I'm at the age where I'm gonna be a double brace guy.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Better to be a double brace guy than to be a guy in the hospital with a cast because you broke your ankle quite literally. And what I'm finding in my old age here, Ant, is that it's not that people are breaking my ankles, right? I'm not getting crossed up on the ones
completely self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, maybe I'm trying to get out for a fast break, and then bam, I catch a toe, and then there goes that ankle, there goes that hamstring. I had a league game on Monday. It was a tough loss, but I went to take a charge, and this dude had probably 5 or 6 steps, full blown, head down. And I was nursing a rib injury. Thought I broke my ribs a couple months ago. Same exact spot. Pow. Two or three plays later, I took a kick it was a fadeaway jumper. Guy kicks out, hits me right in the where, right in the family jewels, and I got called for a foul. Needless to say, I was unhappy with the refs that day, but hey, that's okay.
Officiating not too much to rely on there in the old league games throughout Westchester and New York City. But hey, we get out, we hustle, we run, we sweat, we grind, bet by bet. We're here for some fun this week.
Hey man, and we're not here to talk about old man league here. We're here to talk about the NBA, the pros. Speaking of which, I got my NBA 75 hat on. Of course, on the other side, we got the New York Knickerbockers going to the game tonight, and the people last time they asked. I'm 2-1 straight up money line on pandemic games at the Garden. The Knicks are plus 3.5 tonight. Do you think we can make it 3-1, a little underdog victory?
I think we can. And you even on that one loss, I believe you were live hedging yourself throughout the evening, right?
Yeah, live hedging, hit that one. Got a pretty good line on it. We lost on another buzzer beater, which would have been insane because I was at that Celtics game where they were down 17-4 and then down 19 or 20 at the half. RJ Barrett banked 3, even though the guy hadn't hit a shot all game. It was literally one of those moments where I was there with the lady for my birthday, and she was like, I'm so sorry that this is the game we went to. So they were down so much. And then as that inbound pass comes in, I'm like, why would they ever give it to Art? Wow!
It was terribly drawn up. Looks like Tibbs had no idea what he was doing coming out of the sidelines, and somehow RJ banks it home.
I know, and I feel like the Knicks in general have looked like they have no idea what they're doing all season. What the hell is going on with Jules? Jules, my guy.
He got paid. Got paid. Man got paid.
I know, but that doesn't mean that he can't hit a mid-range 2 anymore. He used to be the professor of unoptimized shots, hitting that 18-footer all day. Now that's just Clang City, triple team on the drives inside the paint, and somehow not playing defense.
That's
but anyway.
very true. Well, before we dive into the NBA, anything on the NFL worth hitting? You got any look-ahead spots or leans for the Super Bowl featuring the Joey Burrow and the Bengals versus the Los Angeles Rams led by Matthew Stafford because he got out of Detroit?
Yeah, the irony here, the Bengals have burned me 2 weeks in a row. The fact that the Chiefs, 6 points in 2 second halves against this Bengals defense is...
I tweeted it at one point. I think I shared it with you too. Like, I couldn't believe the similarities between that game because I'm thinking that game's the outlier. The second half there was the outlier, right? The first half is what you were going to see, and when that happened again and repeated itself in the first half, it's like, oh, we're fine. We'll cruise into the second half,
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse or whatever the expression is, but when they lost that timeout on the bad spot on the first drive of the game, and then don't have a timeout to stop the clock when they don't score at a half, right there, I was ready just to turn the television off. I'm like, history writes itself. We know what's happening here. But look ahead here, Super Bowl 56. I think the halftime show is going to be pretty insane. Dre, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, Mary J. Blige. Although she is from the East Coast. I get that she's kind of part of that crew, or they're part of, whatever. But that one I thought was a little bit interesting. But, you got Eminem repping Detroit. You got Stafford repping Detroit. We feel good about that. I mean, my early lean is the Rams, just as pretty much the same handicap. The Rams are a complete team,
right? Exactly.
right? Nothing has changed. And,
Yeah.
we'll go
Yeah.
deeper on this and try to hit both narratives next week,
Yeah.
just to arm everybody with every side, and you can make your own decisions. But
No,
I think that
100%.
O-line is finally going to be exposed.
Well, you'd hope so. I mean, what I think what I underestimated in the cap, and again, we will go really deep next week. We'll let you guys know how long the show's going to be. We'll try and split it into props versus sides versus totals. I mean, biggest game of the year. It's the one worth talking about. The props market is already out and moving. The lines are already out and moving. But one thing that I think I underestimated with the Chiefs' defensive line, maybe compared to the Titans, or again compared to the Rams, is just the ability to rush 4, right? Rush 4, rush 5, get pressure without blitzing. And I think I underestimated how blitz happy Mr. Steve Spagnuolo gets.
Mm-hmm.
And with that Chiefs defense, they really couldn't get pressure, or when they did, Burrow all of a sudden was getting out of it. Something I hadn't seen from him personally as much watching games this year. But hey, we move on. I think one last thing I want to leave the listeners with is just a crazy stat trend thing. You've probably heard the narrative already, right? Because I heard this quickly, right? There's only been 2 Super Bowls and it's 2 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won a college football national championship and a Super Bowl. 2.
And throw a Heisman in there.
Well,
the first ever.
He would be the first to win the Heisman, right? So
Yeah.
Joe Montana, Joe Namath have done the previous thing I just mentioned. You sprinkle in the Heisman, which maybe we'll start calling the NFL Triple Crown. Never has happened. He would be the first.
And let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
The only common thread I see between those 3 quarterbacks is their first name. Do you have to be named Joe
It's wild, right?
to win the double threat, the triple threat trio, baby? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just weird how that works. I wish one.
Well,
of
you
them
also
named
had
something
you
else,
had one underdog and one favorite. I would imagine the Joe Montana led 49ers were favorites over the Bengals in that highly televised Super Bowl.
Right.
Namath, obviously the famous guarantee. Now you break the trend. Could it be 2 favorites and two underdogs and a favorite? So
Yeah.
we'll see.
We'll see. But enough about that. We're going to prepare for the next sport, right? Ant's already been in it. I've been a kind of a post-All-Star game guy myself in the last few seasons on the NBA. I look more on player props. He looks on sides and totals. So we should actually have quite the comprehensive 360-degree view moving forward here, which we feel good about. So we thought today we'd take a few minutes to talk a little bit about just kind of our strategy and approach, him on sides and totals. Obviously, we've got some of our homies out there, Sharky Water Nation, J Money is Money, who are absolutely crushing the NBA right now. I don't think what you'll hear from us is radically different between the analysis that they do, but nonetheless, always good to get more POVs. We're trying to arm you with the knowledge, the skills, the things that we look for, so you can increase your bankroll, you can make more profits, and so far, we've both been pretty okay with that. I don't have my record right in front of me from last year, but was hitting at about 55% on player props in the second half of the season. Only real reason I don't dive in during the first half of the season is, 1, data, not that statistically significant, and 2, with football going on, I like to keep my focus there. But, Ant, how are we doing so far this season on the NBA?
I'm doing well. Obviously, majority of my picks are in a paid community Slack environment that we have a lot of fun with. Shout out to the GPO lock gentlemen. But I still try to put a lot out there on Twitter, especially with the NBA, because it's nightly, it's daily, right? And you can have some fun with it. But right now I'm sitting at a clip of, 54.93%. So just a hair under 55.
Not
the
bad.
units just dipped below 20, which has been my high watermark, low 20s of the year. So I'm at plus 19.74. I really want to cruise now, into the All-Star break, build a little bit of cushion above 20. And then after the All-Star break, really try to hit the sweet spot of the season, surpass that 30 number. I did have one slow stretch in early January that hopefully I put behind me where I dipped back down. So it's been good to get back to that, high watermark area again now. And now we just got to smash through the wall, man. So.
Yeah, I love that. I just pulled up my NBA record here. 243, 204, and 4, 54% win percentage, 5.89 ROI. So my sample size isn't as large as it is compared to a couple other of the sports that I bet. But nonetheless, early indications show that our approach is directionally working. So we're looking forward to ramping that up full steam ahead. So NBA season pretty interesting so far. Biggest surprises, Ant? Other than my Knicks being the worst team in the league, we don't need to talk about that right now.
Mid-range Julius. I think for me, it's the top 4 seeds in the East. Now, obviously, a lot of things can happen. If you guys remember back to the first 1 to 2, maybe even 3 weeks of the season, I believe the Washington Wizards were in the top spot for a little bit, if not the top 3, top 5. They are all the way down now in currently, I think, 12th place. So things happen, right? Standings move. But what jumps out to me in the East is just the top 4, right? Surprising. A loaded East. So you probably expect a Philly, a Brooklyn, a Milwaukee, maybe a Miami, right? Atlanta, if they were going to make a jump from last year. Your Knicks, if they were going to make a jump from last year, because I think they ended up in the 4th spot. The top 4 seeds in the East, if the season ended today, are Chicago, Philly, not surprising, Miami, not surprising, Cleveland, right?
Surprising.
So 2 out of those top 4 teams, very surprising. Teams that I think I personally did expect to do better. Probably the Cavs more so than the Bulls. So good job by both of them. But even Cavs doing better, I would have said play-in tournament to you, not 4 seed, right? Middling with hosting a home playoff series. So that to me jumps out.
Yeah, and this Cleveland team is currently 4th in terms of average score margin, only behind Utah, Phoenix, and Golden State. I don't have strength of schedule numbers ahead of me, but plus 4.6, that's pretty okay. Chicago here, plus 2, good for 11th in the league. Do we anticipate regression coming there?
Could be. They've been really banged up lately too, so I wonder if that's hit a little bit of a skid. If you looked at their last 10, I could try to pull it up pretty quickly. It's probably a little messier. I think they did get the win and the cover last night against Orlando. Somehow backdoored it to get a decent number. No, they're 5-5 in their last 10. I think again they had a stretch where Levine was out. Caruso is out again. Lonzo Ball's been hurt, so just tough injuries. But DeRozan's probably the biggest, free agent signing potentially of the offseason, or maybe most surprising one that I think a lot of people overrated. He's doing what the Knicks probably expected Kemba to do. I think he's doing there in Chicago.
Oh, the wound was salted again, baby. Burn. Yeah, that was good. I'm going to get some aloe as soon as this call wraps up. And the Knicks are an absolute mess. I just don't understand it. But great points. Yeah. And, good to see the Bulls kind of return to form. That black and red. I mean, swagger alone through the roof, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Well, let's dive. One thing I wanted to cover a little bit with you was just, I haven't made any picks official on here. Maybe we'll do some on the show, but I think what we were trying to look at going forward, right? Obviously, I am betting it nightly. You're probably going to get into that from the props. We'll have more of this in the future. Mm-hmm. But right now, what's interesting is you could look at updated season totals, or yes, no's to make the playoffs, right? And just some value in the futures market. And I think you target a lot of these are very locked in, right? Because of how far we are, just what they expect. The bottom feeders are the bottom feeders. Mm-hmm. And the top 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in these conferences are pretty set. But especially in the East, the West was a little bit more, kind of firm. But in the East, there's a lot of teams I think that are in the mix, right? Now, key reminder, to make the playoffs, you have to get into the play-in. If you're in the 7 to 10 range that I'm probably talking about right now, 7 to 12, and then win the play-in game. And I think you had a couple victories off of that last year and one loss. Maybe did you end up going 1-1?
Yeah, the Warriors killed me on the play-in. I forget who that one was, but took all of those second half futures essentially to make the playoffs. Second half futures. I think went 3-1, 4-1. Yep. It was definitely solid. But
I know
they were
the one
sweaty.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It came.
Yeah, then like you said, you get one in the play-in, and the sweat only amplifies because then at that point you could be in 1 or 2 do or die elimination style games, which in the NBA is crazy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had 2 in the play-in, and one was the Warriors. Whoever they played, the other team was the lower seed. So I'm pretty sure they had to win back-to-back, and they did. I forget who it was. But talk about sitting down on my couch with an ice cold beer and some prime real estate, and everybody's like, why the hell do you even care about this game? I'm like, well, let me tell you, a short-term high volatility investment.
Yeah, and maybe you take the same approach too. We're still layering in the data, but I don't know if you want to touch on that approach from last year and what worked well, because I think we were starting to look at 538 and projected percentages to make the playoffs. You can obviously pull other metrics. I think point differential is going to be really important on the back half of the year. You look for those regression spots or those buy low spots, like you mentioned with the Bulls, are so key.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, place to start for me is always going to be point differential juxtaposed to record. Try to figure out who's over indexing, who's under indexing, and then look at that kind of compared to strength of schedule, right? You could have a great point differential, but you've played only the bottom half of the league. That was actually one of the reasons last year why I didn't take the Knicks. They were very strong in the first half of the year, obviously very strong at the end of the year as well, but their strength of schedule was poor coming into the All-Star break compared to the contenders they had to beat. And they showed up, right? Outliers exist. That was cool. But definitely the place I start is going to be point differential juxtaposed with record, figure out who's real and who's not, or at least perceived to be. And I think you nailed it, man. With the 538 projections, they've got two sets of projections, which I think are very, very interesting. Similar to how we use Football Outsiders for football in DVOA. They've got their Raptor projections, which is essentially, from my understanding, they are running something like 50,000 simulations of outcomes based on whatever their inputs are, a little bit of a black box there, to give you projected playoff chances, to give you projected championship appearance projections, things along those lines. And then they also have the traditional ELO ratings, which takes into account kind of strength of schedule and gives you better points for better wins. But nonetheless, looking at the two of those combined with point differential, I think gives you a really good indication of who should be a contender and who's not. And then, of course, we look at assorted lines, and hopefully you could find somebody who has a great point differential but a terrible record who is projected to make the playoffs on both the ELO and the Raptor ratings from 538 at a juicy line. That's kind of best case scenario for me.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned it. We're going to talk a little bit more about the East in this podcast just because I think it's a little deeper, a little bit more contested. In the West, sitting in the play-in realm right now, you have the Timberwolves, Clippers, Lakers, and Portland make out your 7 through 10. Technically speaking, the Pelicans and Spurs and Kings are all in the hunt. The Pelicans are 2 games back, 2.5 for the Spurs, and a full 3.5 for the Sacramento Kings. I just don't think any of those teams scare anybody, right? The Spurs don't really have the depth that they've had in the past. They're obviously rebuilding, which is interesting with Pop. The Pelicans, Zion is less. He's just maybe eating his way out of New Orleans. We'll see what happens. I hope he comes back. I want to see him, but those reports are. You don't hear anything out of that camp anymore, which is terrifying.
Duke reunion coming here in New York City, baby.
Cam Reddish,
really good,
RJ Barrett,
Shipping.
Zion himself.
Coach K looking for an assistant coaching job, I heard, after he retires.
Hey, he is hanging it up, so I think the timing works.
Yeah, and timing is everything in life, right, dude? But, you call out the Kings here, right? They're number 26 in the league in terms of average scoring margin, and the good old Pelicans, they're 25th. So those are not teams that I'm necessarily looking to turn it around. Obviously, injuries with Zion, a big X factor there. But the Spurs, on the other hand, 18th at minus 0.02. So that could be an interesting one. Kind of a team that I think a lot of people have sold on. Is this a good buy low?
Absolutely. It could be a buy low. I think the problem with them, where I don't trust them, is can they do damage in a play-in? And I think that makes it a little tougher, right? When you actually look at the projections to make the playoffs, again, just kind of sticking to yours, those are probably the 2 teams to target in the West. It would either be the Kings or the Spurs. The Kings, statistically, as you just mentioned, worse. They also have a 0.2% per those Raptor ratings to make the playoffs, where you look up at the Spurs and you jump to 4%. And when you compare that 4% to the Spurs number, there is value, right? The Spurs, therefore, would it be sitting at, let me just pull that up for you. No, not posted. F Kings, afraid to hang a number. There it is. Yes, plus 1,600. So, yeah, that is a big number, right? What worries me there is, which, again, we'll talk about a little bit when we switch to the East, is I can't see either of those teams, the Spurs or the Kings, even if you want to look at their value in the buy low, getting through some combination of the Timberwolves, Clippers, Lakers, or Blazers.
Sure.
So for me, it's a no bet, but I think you're right. The Spurs would be the better of the two. And out of the whole West, the Spurs are probably your only option there to find some value. I can't even find Lakers odds yet. Those will probably pop up and ebb and flow. And the Timberwolves, to me, are a playoff team. The Clippers are super interesting, depending on what happens with injuries. Does Kawhi come back? Does PG come back? Do they shut down the whole thing? They could be an interesting bet. Sitting at 8 comfortably in the play-in mix. But if you don't have those guys and it's just those cast of characters, again, do you trust them in the play-in?
Yeah, for sure. And they kind of feel like they are right where they should be with this current squad. They're currently 20th in the league in terms of average point differential, minus 0.7. So, right there around even. And what's their record? 26-27. It's amazing when those numbers match up. And it's something that, just looking at our notes here that I think is super interesting is, as we're trying to find these future bets, these second half bets, of course, over the All-Star break, we'll have just about every team. So we will revisit this conversation. But, using the projected at 538 projected percentage of playoff chances is also really interesting to then take the line. You got Boston here at -175. Of course, that line is just an indication of probability as well. So being able to juxtapose kind of where the gaps are between the Raptor, the ELO ratings, and the percentage of playoff makes versus what Vegas has in the line. Something to obviously look at and kind of rehashing what we already said, but I don't think we specifically articulated that point, but a good way to find perceived value.
Yeah, I mean, look, the three that jumped out at me, and I want to calculate some value off of this and figure it out based on the lines, but, I think Boston, Atlanta, and Toronto are probably all pretty good yeses. The Boston one is heavier at -175, but you look at experience of this team, in a one-game scenario, can they get it done? I trust these guys. Atlanta, where they were last year, where they started, where they came from. They've also been a team that has gotten a little bit hotter lately. Toronto's been surprising, young core, but still playing well. Toronto kind of jumped out because those odds are sitting at +110 for the yes still. They're currently in 8th, so they would be in a pretty comfortable spot to only have to win one play-in game if they can get it done right away. And they have a 62% chance per those ratings to make the playoffs. So 62% versus the +110. Pretty fair. Again, 56% for Atlanta, +150,
right?
82% for Boston over the -175. So, obviously there your value is shrinking, right? It's less juicy, less fun, but there's reasons for that. These are teams that even from a projected ratings on 50,000 simulations, it seems to play out that way.
Yep, completely aligned. Very interesting. And this hate laying the juice like -175 here, but you got the Celtics in 9th in the East at 27-25. Yet point differential, they're 7th best in the league. So, that could be
Celtics for me are one. Like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about those three. I don't think I'll play all three. That could be a value way to do it, but I may end up laying something between 1.5 and 2 units on that 175 number. I also saw it higher in some spots. I saw it closer to -190. -200 in some other spots. So that -175 is hanging there on DraftKings right now. I do think that's good value. Again, you probably have some upside and some value with the Hawks and Raptors based on the way they're playing, but get ready for the sweat, right? Because these are all teams currently in the play-in mix. That's the Raptors are at 8th, the Hawks are at 10th, and the Celtics are at 9th. So you are talking play-in sweat. Get on the old man who bets couch, and he'll have a cold one with you.
Hell yeah, plenty of room on the couch. And, I think this is a conversation, again, that we'll pick up, coming into the All-Star break. It'll be right after the Super Bowl is over, and we won't have many sports to bet on. Obviously, we can look at college basketball as well. Excited to ramp back up on that front. But, Ant, my spidey senses are tingling a little bit here. Perhaps you're percolating on a free pick for tonight, Wednesday, 2-2.
I think I am. We want to keep
22
going. 2-2-22. We're going to put $222.22 on this pick. I'm probably not doing that because I initially released it as a half unit play to the Slack, so that does not equate to $222.22.
$400.44. Yeah,
but
everybody's standard use it.
I may do it anyway. But before we go there, real quick, are you jumping on the Knicks as a playoff team +900 right now? The No at -5,000. They're currently in 13th, 6 back from 10th.
I believe in Tom Thibodeau, the Dimsdale Dimmadome. But I'm really concerned about Jules. I don't know. Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to take anything till the All-Star break. I know we got the trade deadline coming up as well. Who the hell knows where this team's going to be at? But, I'll get a good ocular pat down in person tonight at the Garden, and I'll let you know to see how body language is. We need Jules to stop fighting his demons and start playing basketball. But
there you go.
If he does, IQ looks great. Barrett looks great. At Fournier, the scrappiest player in all the NBA and also a prolific offensive scorer. Not that he wasn't down in Orlando, but I didn't realize he was this good. And he did drop a career-high 41 points 2 games ago when I was there. So perhaps look at Fournier. There's a strong correlation of old man who bets in the building and my main man, Evan Fournier, Parlez-vous français, going off.
Fair. Prolific. I feel like you've been watching a lot of Walt Clyde Frazier, so props to the man.
Yeah,
calling the games, time. Baby.
Yeah.
I think when we get into it too, I think Indiana at +4,000, the Knicks at +900. Interesting, because again, you get into the play and you could make some noise. But let's get to the 2-2 2022 $222.22 special pick that we're going to have some fun with. We are targeting the Philadelphia 76ers for the first half, -6. This is because Philly at home typically has been a little bit stronger in that spot. They have the leading MVP candidate who might be worth a sprinkle too. I think he's jumped into first in most places with Joel Embiid having another career year. He doesn't care that Ben Simmons isn't there. It doesn't matter. But specifically keying in on this and why is Washington during their recent 6-game slide. Again, this is the same Washington that I said before has fallen from as high as first to currently sitting in 12th in the Eastern Conference. During this 6-game losing streak, their first half splits, they lost 74-62, 60-45, 63-41. Last night, 53-40. They did have, so that's 4, that would be 4 L's on this number that I'm about to give you. They did have a better spot in a 55-54 game, I think was against Toronto. They lost in the second half. Then they did beat up somehow in the Clippers, the helpless, scrappy Clippers without PG and without Kawhi. 36-66. So they were up 66-36 at halftime. Somehow lost that game. 116-115. So
That's
piece
impressive.
it all together. This team is not playing a strong half. They can't put it together for 4 quarters for sure. They've definitely come out a little slower, a little sluggish. Part of these games are without Bradley Beal, which I think you're going to continue to see here tonight. Philly comes in with Joel Embiid well rested. He did not play the other night in a Sacramento victory that Memphis Grizzlies. I don't know why I wrote down Sacramento. The Philadelphia 76ers without their MVP and their leader did beat the Memphis Grizzlies in overtime. Also a nice little revenge factor here. You go back to January 17th, not that long ago, Embiid and the full crew in the lineup, obviously before the 6-game slide that I just referenced. And the Washington Wizards beat the same Philadelphia 76ers 117-98. They were up 61-55 in the first half. The opening or closing line there was -1 or -1.5 to Philly. Now you flip right back to this game. The line skyrockets up to 10.5, 11. I think you're going to get a strong performance right out the gate. I might look at the first quarter, but official -6, -110 were the best odds I saw. So I saw some -6, -115s, and also saw some -6.5s, -110. So do some shopping if you can get to 6. I think it's worth it.
All right. I love it. And, I think what's going on in the rest of the show, right? Obviously, NFL is over. NFL was beautiful because you get your lines a week in advance, but that doesn't mean that the show's going to stop. We're going to press on. We're talking NBA. We're going to be talking about what lines we need to bet games on Saturdays and Sundays, essentially prepping you for the weekend, what to look for, what to avoid, things along those lines. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great second half of the basketball season. We've got the Super Bowl special coming up next week, and then we got the probably basketball until baseball. And then it's just more data, more sports, more numbers. And any final words for the people out there?
Hopefully baseball. I'll leave it with that.
True. Yeah, say a prayer to both the prophet gods and the baseball gods. And who the hell knows? If we don't have baseball, it's going to be a sad, sad spring. But perhaps we'll start betting on, Lax 2-0 on the season for your boy. I hope you guys can find lacrosse lines.
Follow him on Twitter because if you got lacrosse lines, Jeff is
the
old man is worth a look.
Yeah, 4 years of college lacrosse will do that for you after, I picked up a stick in 2nd grade, so know the game well. But that's okay. Enough rambling about America's sport. Lacrosse, this always will be short-term high volatility investments. Until next week.